All right. So far I got this using Moore's charts, and it refreshes this div like every 6 seconds or so. It refreshes this bit of data up here every 5 seconds or so, and it does that with random data. So it's just a formula in PHP or a predefined I guess variable or function, yeah, a predefined function in PHP which just spits out random numbers. So I have it set for like 0 to 100, 0 to 100, and like no 0 to 125, and then 0 to 200, 300, something like that, something high on that for kilowatt hours. But this is Moore's charts, and this is pretty cool because then with the charts, can I get it now? Of course, right there maybe. There we go, that looks a little bit better. So with Moore's charts, I can go like this, and then I can see each plotted point, and as it changes, I should get the change in values as well. Yeah, there we go. And then, I picked the colors out myself, so that was kind of cool. I created the background image just through MS Paint, just threw it up there real quick. Might get something professionally done, like off of Fiverr.com or something like that pretty soon. Function and controls. This is all on that Raspberry Pi 7-inch screen, by the way. Got the sensor hooked up, and I'm working on the scripting right now to where it'll actually collect the sensor data. So here I got this all working to where, like, once you click on it, it unhides the section that has the data and then fills that section with with code that's produced by a PHP file. Right now the PHP file just echoes the same thing, which is a command, so it just spits out the same information. And then you have all your buttons here that do its stuff here. But the background doesn't move, so it's cool. So you can just scroll the content across it. Again, if I press irrigation, it'll go down to the irrigation section and then show it. I got a lot. I've been messing around with the not PHP, but the CSS quite a bit. Also, I got it in the background where every, I think, 10 minutes or 5 minutes or so, it refreshes the screen fully. So I finally got that going. This is Google Chrome in kiosk mode. I took out the back and forth buttons because of it just wasn't necessary, because I'm making this whole thing a one-pager. I usually like to do my web apps where it's just one page, and I feel like for me it's like a cleaner look and a lot less BS. But there's a lot of other stuff you have to do so it can fill all that information into the page, so you don't have to refresh or go anywhere else. Everything's right there on the same page. So if I go to alerts, does the same thing. Just added this. I got the menus here working the same way. So if I hit temperature, it does the same thing there. Settings. So I got the settings button here and the settings button here. Depending on what browser or what device you're using or accessing this site on, it will change the way the menus work. I actually took out the the representation of this menu on for mobile phones. It was kind of annoying, and I didn't feel like trying to mess with the there's these things called on click, on touch, and swipe and all this other stuff, and I didn't want to deal with that with Java. I was just already kind of like at my end last night with it, so I was like, you know what, forget it. I guess a bit of laziness, but also I didn't really think I needed it when I have these nice buttons here that I want people to really use. And then it's cool here because I already know this is going to be an 800 by 480 screen. So this site is made for that. So if you view it on a browser or the desktop version using your mobile phone, everything looks scrunched up a little bit. It only goes at most 960 pixels on any screen, at most. The data, that is. Everything else, repeats and fills up the entire screen all the way up to, I tested all the way up to 4K. The Google tools allow you to do that. Or to simulate that, I should say. So the settings button, you click on here, it shows a nice modal here, or what they call a modal, and it dims the background here. So if I pressed it, I can get back to it. But here, and then this, actually you can't see it with this camera here, but it actually fades that information in and fills it via, again, another PHP file somewhere else. Then I have the X for closing here, just for people that don't know how to use the modal or modals. But I have that there, and it works up there as well. So, but yeah, that's it. Pretty much an update, and I'm working on. I'm not a person that's a fan of Python as a coding language. Oh, let me get rid of that. We don't need people to see that stuff. Sorry, that's just, it's customer data, so you don't want to get that information out there. Anyways, so this is the same collection script in Python, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's not really that, it's not really that much. And then this is my version. Crap. Oh, yeah, I did that. Sorry. Moved out of the directory here. Boom. This is my version. So, a little bit smaller. I pieced some stuff together. Again, all this is on GitHub. But this actually, whereas this would only get the sensor information from one sensor, in that, because what it does, it looks for a file in a directory and then gets a certain value out of that and then runs calculations against the string that comes out of it. So that string will be in, a couple, like probably about in the thousands, or I think 10,000s. The number itself would be like a 5-digit number, I should say. And then it, runs the calculations, dividing it by 1,000, and then runs the calculation against it, so it can go from temperature, from Celsius to Fahrenheit. This does the same thing, but with mine, a little bit simpler. Again, I got code snippets, put it together, what I needed, and then, ran a whole while loop, and I'm going to be adding more stuff to it. But what this does, it gets everything in that directory that matches what I need as far as my file is concerned. And so that means I can collect all the sensor data, everything that's in there. So that's really cool. And if I go down here on the other section of the screen, you guys can't see it too well, but you'll see this here. So every so often, every 3 seconds, it runs the function over and over again. And my test directory only has just the static file, so it's not really any changes. It's not real sensor data. But what it does show is that the volume at the very bottom, which is this one here, is the time in epoch. And if you're in the computer field, epoch is the time since January 1st, 1970. What's it called? 0-100 hours. So that's what epoch is. So it's all the seconds, and it's been counting that since then, or it calculates the time since then. And essentially, if you use epoch, it's easier to run time calculations against, and you can actually do, the difference in time in seconds, but it's the seconds since then, and that's how many seconds have passed since 1970, or January 1st, 1970. So that's pretty cool. I have it running in a while loop, and the while loop just says while 0 equals 0, so it just runs forever, and then sleeps 3 seconds, collects the information again. I'm gonna have this to where it's actually gonna take that information and take the sensor data that it collects and write it to a database, and then it just runs in the background. I'll probably have it running on startup, and it just keeps on chugging along and writing all that information, and then generates the information for this graph. And then this graph will just graph that information for me, and this graph will graph that information for me and make it available, and graph it here, and it'll fill all of this with real data. So it'll actually be something that is, useful. But I'm liking the progress with it. I mean, I still am in love. Still am in love with these connectors and how all that works. You got to be on the PHP manual site here, just looking at all types of other stuff, and of course, no desk is complete without random parts and keyboards. Alrighty, that's it. Thank you very much.